Some nights I secretly wish that Chinese police arrest us. Maybe that's what you call dead or dying. A woman and her niece left on the top of the snow mountain for an entire night. And some of the kids in the group don't even know the parent's name. After seeing his songs to the Dalai Lama, I felt that I was in India now. But the most hardest part was the emotional reconnection.
So he was in prison just for bringing a Tibetan flag into Tibet.
His Holiness, the Dalai Lama's greatest hope for the Tibetan children. He has invested so much in schooling the Tibetan community.
The weather is not good.
Is a code to signal that the condition is not good for a conversation. Current visa-free travel arrangement offered by Chinese government is a trap, and I have no intention of using that.
This is Tibet Unfiltered. Real stories, real Tibet. Unfiltered conversations, eyewitness accounts, and deep dive investigations that challenge the Chinese Communist Party's narrative on Tibet. I'm your host, Geraldine Nordfeldt. I'm a former journalist and board member of the Australia-Tibet Council, with production by Sonam Gyeltsin. As the Dalai Lama said, in our struggle for freedom, truth is the only weapon we possess. Many people know about the Dalai Lama's famous journey into exile in 1959, fleeing his homeland Tibet on foot and horseback across the Himalayan mountains and into India. His flight to freedom led to around 150,000 Tibetans following his path across the mountains into refugee life. But today, increased military forces on the border means escape from Tibet is now almost impossible. Before 2008, hundreds of people crossed the border into Nepal, then India every year. But now, that number is in single digits. Our guest today made that extraordinary journey when she was just 7 years old. Pema Taratsang isn't like most public servants in Canberra. As a small child, without her parents, she walked across the Himalayas for 42 days in the dark of night, through snow into Nepal, before seeking refuge in Dharamsala, India. Pema has an extraordinary story to share. Welcome to Tibet Unfiltered. What made you decide to share your story now?
Thank you for having me on the Tibet Unfiltered. Personally, I am not that expressive and hesitate to share my story. My story is rather ordinary as compared to some of the more extraordinary stories. But then one thing changed during the ATC lobby day, because Dr. Jervis said that if you don't tell your Tibetan story, someone else will tell. And that someone else is the Chinese Communist Party. And that made me realize that every Tibetan story matters.
Let's start at the very beginning. You were so young when you left Tibet, but could you please take us back to your early childhood there before you left? You're from Kham, which is in eastern regional Tibet. What did your family do there?
Like many other Tibetan families, my family is a normal family, and it's a big joint family, and everyone lives together. And being the eldest child in the family, I spent most of my time with my grandparents. And since my parents are busy looking after my other siblings, so I've got 3 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. She was not even born when I left. I think she born after several years when I left Tibet, and I have never met or seen her in person. Our family is not nomad, but we do have livestock, and we do farming also. And then I have like vague memories of going out with my aunt, my dad's younger sister, helping her herding the sheep and goats and that sort of thing. So that's the memory that I have.
Your family living situation would be considered pretty unique in Australia today. Your grandmother had 3 husbands at the same time. Could you tell us about that arrangement?
My grandmother was married to 3 husbands, and they were brothers. And that form of marriage is quite common among, Tibetans, including the place where I'm from in Kham. And when I look back, maybe it's because of protecting the family property and land. The resources are shared or inherited collectively. So
What are your memories of your grandmother as a person and of her home?
I spend most of my time with grandmother and my granddad. Although I don't remember much, I have that problem which takes me a long time to fall asleep. When I sleep with my grandparents, I play with her hair, just curling her hair around my fingers, and I think it makes me fall asleep easier, and it's quite soothing for me. But my grandmother doesn't like as much as I like, because I remember she used to tell me that, let me sleep, I have to wake up early in the morning and do house chores. And I also remember we had a grumpy cat which used to come and sleep with us. During the daytime, the cat is very selfish sort of thing. It won't let you touch, or it will stay away from everyone. But in the night, it will just sneak into your bedroom and just sleep on top of us. So I think those two memories are most clear in my mind.
Do you remember when everything changed? When did you know that you'd be leaving Tibet, or did you understand that you'd be leaving Tibet? And continue, you tell us how that started for you and how old you were then.
My uncle, my dad's younger brother, he was the first bloke from our village who went out of village to Lhasa and do his own business. And he would return home once a year during Tibetan New Year, which is Lhasa. And he is well respected within the village, and everyone in the family listens to him. So one day he came home from Lhasa with one of his friends, and he told the family that he's going to take me and two of my cousins to Lhasa. And after a few days, his friend came back with, I think, two of his cousins and one nephew, I think, and they stayed the night there in my home. So I don't really know what's happening, but next morning, my whole family were crying, hugging us, and then we sorry.
It's okay.
So when my uncle said he's going to take us to Lhasa, since I was a kid, we were excited to go out of our village, but then we were confused, because family members are crying and hugging us, but then we were looking at each other and just smiling. And then my uncle and his friend drove us to, six of us, two of my cousin, me, and then my uncle's niece and one nephew, six of us in car. And I think that journey itself was a big one, because none of us have traveled that far in car before, and all of us were sick due to motion sickness. And we don't remember much, but at the end of the day, I think we reached Lhasa.
So you arrive in Lhasa with the car full of kids, and that's where you met a monk, and you find out that he is going to be your guardian on this journey. How did you then leave Lhasa, and can you tell us about the start of the journey across the Himalayas?
After arriving in Lhasa, I think we stayed in Lhasa for like quite a long time, but I don't remember how many days we stayed there. And looking back now, I think my uncle and his friend have been looking for a reliable road guide and waiting for winter to arrive, because it's safer to cross the Himalayas in winter due to less military presence. But climate is harsher in the winter. And then after staying in Lhasa for quite some time, one night we were taken to a truck. The back of the truck was fully covered. Someone just lifted us onto the truck. And when we entered the truck, it was almost full and there is hardly space to sit. We traveled in that truck for some time. After some time, that truck was stopped in a big, empty, dark place. And someone told us to get down, and all of us just get down from the truck, and my uncle was hugging us and telling us to be good. And then I'm not sure how they made the decision, but my uncle's friends continued the journey with us. And my uncle just went back to Lhasa in that truck. And as soon after my uncle left, we started walking. And after some time, we came across a big river. And every kid in the group were carried by someone else to the other side. So at that time, I asked someone to carry us over the river, and that was the monk. And that's how I met him. He came forward and carried, I think, few of us across the river. And then from that moment, he became my go-to guardian throughout the journey. I remember we went without food for days, eating nothing but drinking water and snow. And some nights I secretly wish that Chinese police arrest us and send us back home so that I could eat and sleep properly. But when I think now, I'm grateful that it didn't happen. Otherwise, I won't be here sharing this story.
There were a couple of major events along the journey that you haven't forgotten. Are you able to please share about those?
So one was we lost a nun. She passed away. So even before we started the snow journey, one day the road guide said, all of us are going to stay here today and rest, because from tomorrow we are going to start the snow journey, so it will be all snow. We'll be walking on the snow. And then the kids in the group were asked to go out and collect dung for the fire, and the nun was lying on the ground. I remember the landscape. It's a big vast grassland where some people were herding their livestock. We came back with the dung that we have collected. I think someone in the group bought a sheep or a goat because someone has prepared something similar to porridge and meat in it. So we were asked to have that for dinner. And we had that, and then the road guy said kids can just sleep. So we slept around the fire in a big circle. And as I mentioned earlier, I always take time to fall asleep. So I was just watching the elders around the near the fire from my blanket like this. And after some time, I saw some of them digging the ground. I think they were digging that hole for quite some time. After some time, they just gently pushed the nun into that pit. For some time, I was really surprised and don't know what's happening. I was thinking that why they pushed the nun into that pit and those sort of thing. And after some time, I realized that maybe that's what you call dead or dying. And that was quite scary. I wasn't able to sleep that whole night. And the other major event that happened on the journey was a woman and her niece left on the top of the snow mountain for an entire night because they couldn't keep up with the group. We climbed up the snow mountain and then climbed down. When we reached at the bottom of the mountain, the road guide realized that two of them were missing. He said that if they make it, they make it. Otherwise, he can't do anything. But then some man in the group started fighting with him because they were saying that you promised their family members that you will safely take them to India. And next morning, one man from our group went out in search of them. That night was quite terrifying for me because we have seen few dead bodies lying on the snow. The man who went out in search of them came back with them, but unfortunately, the girl who was similar to my age couldn't walk anymore because one of her feet was badly frostbitten. And from that day onward, men in our group carried her on back in turns. These two moments are quite terrifying as well as very hard to forget.
Pema, that would have been terrifying as a 6, 7-year-old child to witness all of that. Were there any moments along the walk of moments of resilience or kindness along the way into Nepal?
For me, my uncle's friend and the monk who was there for me whenever I needed, they were the, I think, main source of inspiration and compassion to keep the journey going. And then those terrifying events or scenes along the journey push me to keep going because I don't want to die.
Can you describe the feeling when you did finally arrive in Nepal?
Mhm. After that long snow journey, I think we walked days in the dense forest for quite some time. I think during that time, I think we are already in Nepal. And along the way, I saw so many Tibetans who have lost their fingers, food, because of the frostbite. One day, we were stopped by a group of men. It turns out that they were Nepali police, and they took us into a large empty room. After some time, a group of Tibetans wearing suits, they came into the house and we were taken to Tibetan reception center in Nepal. At the reception center, there were so many Tibetans and kids like us. So what I liked the most when I arrived in the reception center was the black tea and the tsampa that I could eat as much as I want after a long time.
So, like most Tibetans who cross from Tibet into Nepal, your next destination was India, where
Mhm.
you went to boarding school at the Dalai Lama's Tibetan Children's Village School. What was life like there?
The Tibetan staff in the reception center would tell us when are we going to India, who is with the group, those sort of things. They would document us, and some of the kids in the group don't even know the parents' name, and those staff in the reception center put the names of some of people in our group as their parents. One day we were sent to India by bus. We stayed in reception center in Dharamshala. During that time, I think we got audience from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. After seeing His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I felt that I was in India now. Like many other Tibetan students, I went to one of the boarding schools that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has established for the Tibetan children. When I look back now, the boarding school life was the most amazing and the best part that I have ever lived in my life because I was given so much opportunities in education and sport. I think the boarding school life taught us everything, adaptability, independence, everything. I would be forever grateful for that.
Kham, where you were born, has its own regional dialect. When you were able to first reconnect with your family, did that new language barrier impact on communication with them?
Yes, absolutely. The Tibetan that I'm speaking right now is highly sort of modernized, and the accent is different. And my mom and dad and my family members back in Kham speaks regional dialect, and I totally forgot that. And so there's a language barrier. But the most hardest part was the emotional reconnection, and we still haven't been able to truly reconnect on that level at the moment. Maybe because I left them so long ago. And on top of that, we don't have common grounds to talk about. If I want to tell them that my life is going great. I'm doing this. I'm watching AFL. They won't understand. And then if they tell me that they're doing this and that, I don't understand, because their life is totally different from mine and my life is totally different from them. So there's a huge void or a gap between the lives that we are living. But I'm grateful for the things that they have done for me. I hope that we will be able to reconnect at the emotional level one day.
I hope so too. Life takes another turn for you after school when a cousin from Tibet makes his way across the mountains and joins you in Dharamsala. He tells you about your uncle. What did he say? What does that mean for you?
He's not actually my cousin. He is my uncle. But since he's just, I think, few years younger than me, I just call him cousin. Yeah, he told me that my uncle who sent me to India was in prison for political activities back in Tibet. I was really surprised to learn that, because in my mind, I think that my uncle is a businessman. But during one of the political activities in Tibet, he was the one who organized Tibetan national flag, which is totally banned in Tibet.
So he was in prison just for bringing the Tibetan flag into Tibet.
For arranging Tibetan national flag. And because of his involvement in the political activities in Tibet, I became eligible to participate in the humanitarian program that Australian government has been offering to Tibetans in India.
So you were able to make your way to Australia on the humanitarian visa as a result of that.
Yep.
What were your first impressions of Australia when you arrived here?
My first impression was everything felt so clean and beautiful. I was also amazed by how quiet it is.
And what was the biggest surprise, good or bad, about building a life here?
The biggest surprise from my point of view is that how quickly you can become independent financially in Australia if you work hard. But some might disagree with me. I was fortunate to have a very nice and good case manager when I first moved to Australia, and she really helped me a lot for the first few months. Overall, I think I'm living a life I could have never imagined, and I just wanted to express my deepest gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Australian government, and the Central Tibetan administration, and every single individual who was and has been part of my journey so far. I won't be able to name all of them. It's gonna be a very long list.
That's still a lovely acknowledgement of all of the moving parts that helped to get you where you are now. You were keen to keep studying when you came to Australia instead of going into immediate paid work. Why did you make that decision to keep studying?
Yeah, so I was really keen to continue my study after moving to Australia for several reasons. First one is my family's dedication, because they sent me to India for education. And the second one is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's greatest hope for the Tibetan children. And he has invested so much in schooling the Tibetan community. Even after my year 12, I went down to South India to do my further studies, and I got support from my school, and I got scholarship, and all. It's all because of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And after moving to Australia, I don't want to waste all those investment, all those dedication, all those years of study. So I just want to study. And since I already had a master's in economics, so I just wanted to combine my interests and His Holiness care for the environment with economics. So that's why I was looking for a course which has both environment and economics. And that's how I discovered the course called the Masters of Environmental and Resource Economics in the Australian National University. I think in July 2015, I just moved down to Canberra to do that master's.
Pema, do you have any contact today with your family still inside Tibet?
Yes, I do. I have contact with my family members who are under CCP's control, but it's difficult to find common topics or common grounds to make effortless communication. And we don't have that emotional connection that you have with your family and kids. And usually I call them once a year to wish them Happy New Year. Occasionally I leave them voice message through WeChat, which is the Chinese version of WhatsApp. If sometimes they say that the weather is not good, then we had to stop the conversation. That sentence is a code.
The weather is not good.
Yeah, is a code to signal that the condition is not good for a conversation. So we just end up the conversation and we go months, even years without communication. And I just wait them for contact me back because I don't know what's happening there. So even though I'm living in a free country, but I have to wait for them to initiate the conversation.
You are living in a free country, but have you encountered any pressure here from the Chinese Communist Party in Australia?
Personally, I haven't experienced any pressure directly from the CCP in Australia. Maybe because they can't link me to anyone in Tibet since I left Tibet so long ago. That's why I believe that the current visa-free travel arrangement offered by Chinese government is a trap, and I have no intention of using that to meet my family members. You could say that that is my way of loving my family from a distance. I know Tibetans who have tried to visit their family through that travel arrangement, and they told me that whether you make it or not, CCP collects a lot of information, and sometimes they were interrogated for 6-7 hours and then deported back. From my point of view, I think this travel arrangement is a trap set up by the Chinese government, trying to piece together the missing information about the Tibetan and the targeted groups abroad, try to link people outside and inside Tibet so that they can monitor and control the things that they are doing.
How do you carry the trauma of forced family separation? Do you have any practices or habits that you do for yourself to try and heal?
Maybe I was too young to feel those things or understand what's happening at that time. And then in the boarding school, it's very common. Every child has more extraordinary stories than me. So I didn't feel I was singled out or I'm special because I made this terrible journey or those tough journey, those sort of thing. However, when I entered the non-Tibetan communities, and when they ask me where I'm from, how did you come here, those sort of thing, and then I share my story. Because of their reaction, those reactions make me realize that I think I've been through quite a lot of things. One of my workmates, after hearing my story, he told me that if my journey is a movie, he would watch with his teenagers every night. And one of the workmates told me that he can't believe how did I cope with all those things, because the worst thing that happened to him was breaking his arm. For that, he was really depressed and bedridden for days, and he can't believe how did I cope with all these things. Hearing such things from other people made me reflect on my story. And even though the experience that I have experienced are very common, and I have learned to move on, and I'm grateful for everything that came into my life.
Pema, what does the concept of home mean to you today?
I think that is a tough question for me to answer. I don't know.
When you think back to 7-year-old Pema starting this journey,
Mhm.
this extraordinary journey, what would you say to her?
Maybe I would tell her how brave she was to embark on the journey that was envisioned by her uncle. She was so fortunate to receive, got so many opportunities at every stage of life, and also able to fulfill a tiny part of His Holiness, what His Holiness has hoped for many Tibetan children. That being able to do further studies and then able to work in a place where your interests and His Holiness care for environment were involved.
Finally, at the end of our Tibet Unfiltered conversations, we want to know, what are your top 3 things that you'd like people to know about Tibet or Tibetans?
First, I would say that Tibet is not part of China. It was forcefully and illegally occupied by the Communist Party in 1959. And Tibet was, Tibet is, and Tibet will be a free country no matter what. And then I would say, if you want to learn or connect with Tibet, I would recommend you to read those books which are written by His Holiness Dalai Lama, like Art of Happiness, My Land, My People, Freedom in Exile, then the latest one being Voice for Voicelesses. If you read those things, you will not only learn about Tibet, but you will learn the art of living a calm and peaceful life in this busy and chaotic world. Yeah, I would recommend everyone to read the books of His Holiness Dalai Lama, whether you support Tibet or not, but emotionally or mentally, it will benefit.
They're absolutely wonderful books. On that note, Pema, thank you so much for joining us today on Tibet Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Tibet Unfiltered is a podcast by the Australia Tibet Council, a not-for-profit human rights organisation. We amplify the voices of Tibetans, campaign for their freedom and human rights, and ensure the international community hears their stories against Chinese Communist Party propaganda. I'm your host, Geraldine Nordfeld. Production by Sonam Gyeltsen. Join us again soon for another episode of Tibet Unfiltered.